6:35. We are going to start the planning board meeting for this evening. I need to start by reading the introduction for electronic meetings. As mayor of the Laconia Council, due to
Planning board. I can't remember.
Oh, as tonight's head of the Laconia. Hold on.
You could be mayor tonight. The interim one.
This would be it. Okay. As the chair of the Laconia Planning Board this evening, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, in accordance with the Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are, A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this meeting, where all members of the board will have the ability to communicate and the public will have access to watch the live YouTube video at https://www.youtube.com/LaconiaNH. Listen to this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-312-626-6799, or you can dial 1-646-588-8656. Or you can participate with the Zoom app. The webinar ID is 820-7117-7192, and the webinar password this evening is 563470. B, provide public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Laconia's website. Providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting is there if there's a problem with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 524-3877 extension 249, or email us at planning@laconianh.gov. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at a different time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Thank you. Kalina, roll call lead, please.
Mike Delavecchio,
Present.
Charlie Sinclair,
Here.
and Vice Chair Ed Bonas.
Present.
Okay, and remotely is Rich McNeil,
Present, and I'm alone in the room.
Kirk Biotti,
Here, and I'm alone.
and Jewel Fox,
Here, and I'm alone in the room.
and Stacy Susie,
Here, and I'm alone.
and Sarah Jenna.
It's not working. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, here. And I'm alone.
Perfect.
Staff in attendance this evening is Planning Director Jean Trevethan and Assistant Planner Rob Mora. We need to move on to acceptance of minutes from the previous May 5th meeting. do we need a motion to accept these minutes?
I'll make that motion then.
All right, second on that?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of accepting the May 5th meetings? Kalina?
Okay, so Mike Delavecchio,
That's it.
Charlie Sinclair,
Yes.
Edwin Bonis,
I accept them.
Rich McNeil,
Yes.
Kirk Biotti,
Yes.
Jewel Fox,
Yes, accept.
Stacy Susie,
Yes.
and Sarah Jenna.
All right, motion passes. So we're going to move on. Do we have no presentations this evening? No extensions, so we're going to move on to a continued public hearing for PL 2020-0003 SP, 1330 Union Avenue. Proposal to construct 32 condominium units, garages, and open parking. Do we want to hear from John first and then open to public? John, if you're with us?
I am here.
All righty.
Okay. So at the last meeting, we went through pretty much all of the site plan, like the engineering, the layout of the development, kind of what we were doing with architecture. We had some comments from the board. We needed to get a couple things finalized before and come back to you at this meeting. One of the big things was the landscape plan. We did more work on the landscape plan, and Ralph met with John Barton with John's Corvette. We have a written agreement that's signed by both parties that basically says that defines everything that we agreed to with him and is now included on the landscape plan. So that was a big item that the board wanted to make sure that was taken care of. And the second big item that was kind of finalized was the sign. Charlie had asked about that, and Chris Barton has indicated, and I believe he has spoken with Dean also on this. He said the sign was something that him and his dad had put together, and when he leaves, the sign is going with him. So there's no chance of the sign staying. He is not going to leave the sign. So that's basically where that is at. So the plan basically stands where we have it. If I could share my screen here. Oh, if Rob could let me share my screen.
Yep.
I could turn it on here. Another thing that the board had asked for was whether there was any possibility of a couple extra spaces. We had 10 parking spaces along the cemetery edge, and I added like 5 more spaces to bring it up to 15. So we have 15 extra spaces. Each unit has a 2-car garage that we discussed before, and each unit has an outdoor space. So we have a decent amount of guest parking. We have a bunch of spaces for the residents and garage parking for the residents as well. Let's see, new share. This is the landscape plan. We filled in some more trees along the front, and this side along where John's Corvette is, we filled that in more. We added berms and fences and vegetation, and that is what they met us and has now been signed off on. Let's see. We did do a little bit more on the garages. These are the renderings that were turned in last week. Hold on, go to a garage view. Zoom down a little bit. I don't know if I'll lose resolution. But we tried to, if you remember at the last meeting, they were kind of squared off, like they look more like the building roofs, but we added more like a hip roof with some windows across the front. So that's kind of where we're at with the garage design. Like I said, at the last meeting, we have our alteration of terrain permit already. We actually finalized filling out all the shoreline application information, and that's getting submitted. We're basically in a pretty good spot with all of our permits. Our architecture is done. We have our sign off from the abutter, and we had the answer on the sign. So I think that was most of the items that we were directed to make sure we had answers for and kind of addressed for this meeting. But if there's any questions that the board has or wants me to explain anything further, I'd be happy to do that now.
John, are half the units gonna be 3-bedroom and half are 2-bedroom? I understand that.
I believe they're mostly 3-bedroom. They're pretty similar from floor to floor. Like it isn't something where the level below is a completely different layout. They stay pretty consistent. Ralph, I could ask Ralph on that too. Here, hold on. I can text. I got him on text. So anything else other than that question? I'll figure out the answer.
Charlie?
Thank you. John, I appreciate you looking into the sign. I'm not very happy about the outcome, but I realize that's out of your hands now. And one thing I am curious about though is on the landscaping, is you've got the garage that's closest to John's Corvettes. And I'm curious about the trees that are there now that run along closest to the street back towards the lake. And then I see these trees on your design here. Are those the same trees, I hope?
No. The trees that exist are, if you look where my mouse is, I believe the trees are out in this range, like they're kind of in where the new pavement and in front of where this garage is going to be. The ones that we can try to save are the like tall arborvitaes across the front, and we're kind of intermixing things across the front with that stuff.
Well, aren't those trees right along almost to the property line with John's
Not even
Corvettes?
close. Not even close. They're like 30 some feet off the property line. The ones that start like right in this area and run parallel back towards the lake with John's Corvette. Yeah, those are a long ways into the property.
So what kind of trees are you going to plant there? I see trees in your diagram.
Yes. Let's see. Just want to have to try to see what type they are. I'm just zooming in on it so everyone can see it closer. PP, PG, AB, go over to the PPs are blue select spruces, which will be all along this garage to like screen the garage. Those are all the spruces. There are some PGs. The PGs are, where is it here? PGs are white spruces along there. Then there's AB, which is a balsam fir, which is also kind of an evergreen sort of tree.
And how tall will those be, John? Any idea?
I believe they're 6 foot, like 6 foot tall at minimum when they're planted.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my last question is about where the bookstore is now.
Yep.
I see on the corner there. How far does that pavement go on to where the actual building is right now? The driveway.
This driveway, I believe the building sits like right about here, like it's right off of the pavement.
It's right off the pavement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that corner right there now, there's at least one, if not two, very tall trees. You know, like the ones that are in the front that you're saving. Is there any chance that those can be left alone too? Because that would give you a lot more not that they're trying to hide these beautiful buildings, but this would give it a little more coverage.
Hold on here, let me try to.
I've gone from the sign guy to the tree guy. Terrible.
Hold on here. I'm gonna start a new share. I'm just zooming in on I'm bringing up the existing conditions plan.
You familiar with the tree I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I'm bringing it up so you can see it. I have it on the existing conditions plan. Are you talking about these large ones right out in front of the bookstore?
They're right up against the side of it, yes.
Yep. Yeah, those, I don't, other than if they get hurt at all while the bookstore is coming down, that would be the only thing, but they're in a spot that would not be disturbed otherwise, so.
Okay, that would be wonderful. And I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but has the contract been done for the demolition? Is that with Spear Contractors?
I don't know who is contracted to do that yet.
Okay, somebody had told me that. And I know from past experience with buildings in the city that they've taken down, they're very, very good about preserving trees that are right up against buildings. So I look forward to that being done. Wonderful.
Okay. Yep, and
Thank you.
I did get an answer. They're all 3-bedroom units in the new buildings. There are no 2-bedroom units in these.
Thank you, John.
All right. So it's 6:52 and I'd like to, let me correct that. I think we were supposed to go to public first and then we'd come back with questions.
You might want to poll the rest of the members.
Sure. Are there any other members of the planning board that have questions for John Roque?
I
At
did
this
have one
time?
other, I have one other question.
Sure, go ahead.
Last time the question, or I asked a question about boats, and the answer was no boats, but I'm just wondering if the unit owners are allowed to tow in smaller items such as a motorcycle or a jet ski or a snowmobile and store that on a small trailer in their extra garage bay.
In their extra garage bay, there's we had gone over this with Dean. If they're gonna store anything in the garage, in the 2-car garage area, they cannot impede at least one of the spaces. They could store something at least in one bay of the garage, but because there's an outdoor space as well. So basically everybody has 3 spaces where they're only required to have 2. So if anybody stores anything, it has to be indoors and with the garage door closed.
So a small trailer.
And they cannot fill up their whole garage.
Right, so they can have a small trailer with a.
Yep. If a small boat would fit inside the garage, I mean, these garages, they're 2-car garages, but they're not like oversized 2-car garages. So if they can store some small stuff, but that would be about it.
Okay.
Any other members? All right, hearing none, I'm gonna go ahead and open this up for a public hearing. It is 6:54 and 50 seconds. Any members of the public, Rob?
I have no members of the public that have raised their hands to participate.
0? All right, let's give it a minute.
Well, it's just to be clear to the members of the public that if you wish to speak during this public hearing for the condos, that you need to raise your hand. There's a little icon at the bottom of your screen, looks like a hand. You click that and we'll know that you want to speak.
I think if people are on the phone, they have a *9, something like that as well.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing meeting. It is 6:56 and 10 seconds. At this point, I'd like to open it up to, again, questions from the planning board. If anybody has any questions, please, again, let's hear them. And if not,
I have
move
one
on to
question.
the staff recommendation.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Kurt.
It's more procedural. John, what's the demolition timetable? When are you looking, if all this was to get passed and everything goes, what's your demo and build schedule look like?
The developer is, we have to get our final, what is it? The shoreline permit yet. So it will take a little bit of time here this summer, probably like July before we would have that. I don't know if they would start demoing in the fall or not, but it kind of depends upon when all the final stuff comes through. And there's a little bit dependent upon what happens with the COVID-19 and stuff too. So if it goes too late, it would end up being next spring that they would start everything.
Perfect, thanks.
John, if I could ask a question real quick. Are they gonna, maybe, if they're not gonna demo until maybe as late as next spring, I don't know if they're gonna cut the grass there or do any maintenance in the meantime, but if not, are they gonna maybe put up a big sign there with a design of what's coming and let people know future home of this or that, so people know what's going on there?
If they do not demo that like right away this summer, like get everything done and get the demo done, I believe there will be like a big billboard sign, like with probably something like what, Harold?
Christmas Island?
Yeah, share screen. You'd probably see something like this. I mean, we got the renderings done, so you would see something like this with like whatever they decide for a logo and, you know, future condominiums.
Okay.
All right, anybody else?
I do. Okay, all right, I'm back on the density of this. As we know, this started out, it was zoned commercial. That 6 units per acre, but it was allowed a 60-foot height. And then the zoning got changed from commercial to urban commercial, where now it had 20 units per acre, which is, I think, pretty much impossible with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit with a 2-car garage, but still 20 units per acre. But the green space, as you know, was set as the average of the 2 abutters on each side and the setbacks. And then it was changed again so that now this only requires 10% green space, from what I'm reading, for urban commercial, and the setbacks are very small. So I feel that the zoning requirement 20 per acre is almost meaningless. What's more relevant to me is that this is going from 37 bedrooms to 96 bedrooms. It's going from 48 parking spaces to 111 now, I think, 111 parking spaces. It's hard for me to look at this and visualize how this will actually fit and what it would be like, because it seems so very tight. Is it possible for us to stake out where everything is going to be and do a site visit to see what this really will look like when those buildings and those garages are in place? It's also, I know it's been said that a traffic study isn't needed, but with such a big change, with an extra entrance from the road and so many more cars allowed, it's hard for me to imagine that it's not going to have a much bigger impact than it did when it was Barton's.
In terms of the layout, hold on here. What's going on here? Am I not able to share, Rob?
Should be able to.
Okay, hold on. I mean, in terms of the layout, I mean, this is how this is how it all fits on the property. Our green space, we have actually more green space with the new development than what's currently on the site. Everything does fit. The entranceways, we did the 2 entranceways, so we have options for people to go in and out. That helps break it up quite a bit for the traffic. We have talked about that a couple times. We talked about that at TRC meetings. We've talked about traffic quite a bit, and all along, everyone has been telling us that we haven't been required to do a traffic study. We did a third-party review with the city, like they hired a third-party engineer to look at the project. We've gone through everything with that, and everything is where it needs to be in terms of our plan and what we've put together so far of what's been asked of us.
Okay, well, it's just hard for me to visualize that. Well, somebody could come in there with a small trailer and get it into their garage, and it's hard to visualize getting all these things done in that tight space. I don't see that there's any turnaround or a cul-de-sac on the property. It's, you go in and you go out, and I know in the last.
No, you don't. Everything, we talked about this at the last meeting. All these roads are 2-way roads.
So how does
It's not one way.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
So if I drive in
Yep.
on the north side and there's no empty spots in the visitor spot, where do I go besides back out to Union Ave?
You could,
How do I
like,
turn around?
you're saying a visitor, if a visitor comes in,
Yeah,
they could park in those spots. If there's no spots available at all in that area, they would have to go out and park somewhere else. So there is no other place for them to park. All of the spaces along the front are designated parking spaces. Like if they're going to see a specific owner, the owner could let them park in their space. So they would have a guest parking spaces or the owner's specific space that they could park in. So they would have the option of these spaces or the owner's specific space. But if they were like wanting to turn around and try again, they could like turn in here and go back the other way.
turn
To
in.
try to look
Turn
again,
in
I guess.
Where are you pointing to turn in?
Oh, like you could come around the corner. You could turn just there's 30 feet in between the garage doors, so somebody could turn in here and go back that way. But
Okay,
if there's no parking spaces at all when they come in, then they're gonna have to try to figure something else out.
okay. It just seems that since all the spots are typically assigned or in garages, and one garage is allowed to be used for storage, so there very well could be units that routinely use 4 parking spots. One bay for storage, one bay for a car, their open spot, and one of the visitor spots. It seems very tight to me that it's not, there's, as I say, I mean, you're saying you can turn around, but that looks, if somebody happens to be there, there's no real true turnaround spot in here. It's just hoping that you can, manage to turn around somewhere that's, not in use, but it's not really a turnaround. So it just seems very tight to me and hard to visualize. And that's why I think it might be great to stake it out and see. I mean, people drive large cars today.
There'd be no way you could stake this out without demoing the existing place first. I mean, the stakes would just be interspersed within the buildings and parking lots and going through like the swimming pool and stuff like that. I mean, there's no way to physically stake this out with the buildings currently being there to make it.
Right, I'm sure a lot of it absolutely couldn't be true, but I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this looks very tight.
Dean, any thoughts on this?
The roadway widths which are private driveways. So the normal rules of the road, while they would apply, do not necessarily apply all the time because it's basically a large driveway. They are wide enough for two vehicles to pass. There's 30 feet in between the garages. That's more than adequate to come down the driveway and make the turn into and out of two of the garages. I think that there are at least 3 spots where you have the driveways between the garages that you could turn around. I think there's more parking here than the average condo project has. And I know at certain times of the year, say 4th of July week, that whatever project you go into in the Lakes region, parking is at a premium.
Correct.
And you probably could have twice as much parking and still have a problem on 2 or 3 weekends of the year. All that pavement creates other problems in terms of stormwater runoff, et cetera. So I think the quantity of parking is more than adequate. It is more than the average. It certainly is more than is required. And I think the size of the driveways are large enough for people to maneuver. Is it 100% foolproof? No. I don't think you can probably design something that does that, but I think for a high percentage of the time that this is be very, very adequate.
All right, thank you. Are there any other board members that have any questions? Or
Yes, I'd like to comment. Let me bore you off for 90 seconds and explain why I got on the county board 5 years ago. About 12 years ago, they built the Cumberland Farms up the hill from their beach. I was pretty disappointed that the county would let them build the typical Cumberland Farm store. It could have been like the gas station on Country Club Road in Guilford, which is a pretty New England style building. And they would sell just as much gas and items out of the store with a pretty building as they have in their commercial building there now. Then Taco Bell got built, and McDonald's, and the same thing in Burlington, Vermont. There's a beautiful McDonald's store. Looks like an old New England barn. They sell hot dogs, hamburgers. They would sell just as much if they had a nice New England style building than the building they have there. We have few opportunities to improve our city. The condo development here, I'm more concerned with the height of the building. I don't believe the people across the lake are being notified as abutters. They have no, I have talking to a doctor today who lives in South Down Shore. I'm telling him about the project. He couldn't believe it. They had no idea it's going on. You know, if we let this density go, what's going to be next? John's Corvette's going to be condo, the hardware store, D'Angelo sub shop. With 32 units at 3 bedrooms, it's conceivable there could be 4 cars in several of those units. All your guest parking spots are gone. It's going to be congested. Where are they going to park? John's Corvette, the cemetery across the street, Salvation Army. The buildings themselves are going to be 62 feet tall. Is that correct, John? John Rowe?
That's about correct. That's about right.
It's 62 feet above the parking lot, which according to your survey I'm looking at is 515 feet above sea level. The lake is 505. So that puts us up over 70 feet above the water line. Those are tall buildings. And before we go through with the project, I would love to have a balloon 72 feet in the air and tell the people the buildings are going to be this tall. Do you think it's a good idea? I'm bothered by letting this go through. We can't shoehorn every unit into this area just because it's allowed.
Anybody else, any other discussion?
Me.
Charlie, go ahead.
Mike, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with this. I think it's, the height thing is an issue, but you know what? I wish people had raised an alarm about this when these rules were put into effect. I think that was a year ago, Dean, 2 years ago?
Yeah, a year ago.
A year ago, and I, you know, if people would pay more attention, and even this gentleman you spoke to at Long Bay, if that's where you said he was from.
Correct.
Did he call in tonight? Is he making his opinion? I mean, this is the problem we have here in this city, like other towns. People don't react until something's already done, and they go, where'd that come from? And certainly, this has not been hidden. This has been in the newspapers, and I've even gotten calls from people, and I've encouraged them to call in, because I'm not so sure every time I bring up stuff that my fellow board members believe me when I say it's coming from other people and not just me. So I hear where you're coming from, but I think our hands are kind of, you know, other than personal thoughts we have, we want to vote on this, but you know, if they're going by the rules, as crazy as they may seem to people, it's kind of tough to you know, spank these guys because they're going by what's been allowed by the city council. That being said, I'd like to ask John, again, going back over to the board with John's Corvettes. You mentioned the burns. You know, the trees are going to be replaced with new trees. Will it be a fence of some sort there?
Hold on here. I can pull that back up. Nope, not that one. Okay, what we had put together was there's a fence that starts up by the road, goes back about 120 feet. And at that point, a berm and like a pretty dense row of trees goes all the way across there. There's another little gap up here where there's a fence, and then some additional trees down by the water where the stormwater outlets. So there's sections of fence and a long berm with a bunch of trees on it in the middle.
Okay, how high will the fence be? What's it going to be made of?
4 foot tall fence. And what that does, that was what we came up with, that it isn't like when you're driving down Union Avenue towards it from like the McDonald's side, you don't see like a big wall of a fence there. You'll see the trees, you'll see some units, you'll see landscaping, you'll see over the top of the fence, but it'll be broken up a little bit. But if you did too tall of a fence there, it would look like there's just a wall running down the property line.
Okay, and I hate to get picky about this, but is the fence going to be like chain link fence? Is it going to be wood? Is it going to be post and board? What's it going to be?
I believe it's going to be like a white, vinyl coated fence with pillars in the middle at the posts and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, it won't be a chain link fence.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members?
I have one more comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding, Charlie, you said that they're following the rules. Well, when this started, the rules were that they could have 6 units per acre because it was zoned commercial. If that were the case, that could remove the bottom 8 garages that are on that, the road that's in and out, instead of having their own little inlet there, and would bring it down a whole story. So that, going back to the original rules that were in effect when this started would go a long way. And if you go over to Margate, they're the other zone, and they can only have 6, they can only have 6 units per acre and 35 height restriction. and 60% green space. So right around, 2 doors down, the rules change. If this is going to be the rule all the way along Union Avenue facing Paugus Bay, what is going to prevent every single owner of that property from creating the same thing all the way down? 60-foot or even higher buildings, 5-story buildings facing the lake. If this is, if this is Union commercial, urban commercial, then, if that's what we're saying, this is what it's zoned for, it just, I think it opens the door that that's going to be what we're accepting.
Ed Bona speaking. I would actually say that, when this zoning change was brought to us as a board, we listened to it, we discussed it, and we accepted it. And I think it would be unfortunate for us to, because we finally had an applicant come forward months in advance and give us his proposal. Now that we've seen the first proposal, we're sitting back going, well, we don't like those zoning changes we made. I think it's unfortunate. If, I actually have no issue with this project. And that's me personally. I have no issues with it. But this was also approved by the city council. So we are here with a proposal. They've met their criteria. They've done everything we've asked them to do. And last minute, we're trying to pick it apart. I don't see how that makes any sense at this point. If the board would like to change zoning, I guess, somebody could propose that and we could look at that next. But at this point in time, I think these folks have done what we've asked them to do. And I think they deserve our time to vote on the project that they have presented, regardless of, how it comes out, the personal opinions we may all have, because we all have some. So, so at this point, really, I'd like to ask, Dean for his staff review on this property or this project.
Okay, I just want to cover a few things before we get into the actual staff recommendations. We had a discussion at the last meeting concerning the fence and the landscaping along the John's Corvette property line. That has been addressed. You have the letter from that's signed both by the developer and John Barton. I have spoken with John Barton on several occasions over the past month or so concerning all this. I've also talked with Chris Barton, who is the owner of the current motel, 2 or 3 times. And I've even talked with the owner of the bookstore 2 times. And both Bartons are ready to go. And, this is particularly for the Barton Motel folks, this is going to be a very big change for them in terms of their lifestyle. I mean, they've been running the motel for a number of years, and they are they're done, so to speak. And the reality is, if they were to try to sell the motel as a motel to someone who wanted to operate it as a motel, that the value would be much, much less. We are a great vacation area, and there is still a market for motels to some extent, but it's not what it used to be. And I think we all know that. And just as over the last century or so, the means of vacation in the Lake region has changed several times. People used to arrive by train and go to big hotels, I should say. And then we had the era where we had things like the Methodist campground and those kinds of things. And then we had the little cottages and the cottage colonies and then motels, et cetera. And now, as we see around the lake, condominiums is more or less what is the current preferred way for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people to vacation. And so the value of the land is and the value of the property is not as a motel as much as many of us would like to see it stay that way and be run that way. The reality is that that's not the most highest economic value of future use of the property. So we're taking care of the fence and the landscaping. I do want to mention and reiterate again that the stormwater plan has been designed. It has been peer checked by a third-party engineering group that the city hired. We didn't pay for it. The city hired them. It's our report. There is more green space in the proposed plan than there currently is on the project. And I want to mention that there is currently zero stormwater maintenance, stormwater management on the property now. It either drains into the lake or it drains to the street, and the city has to worry about it. So there is a plan here to manage the stormwater more effectively. When this project was initially brought to the planning board last fall, the developer and the engineers thought that there was going to be a need to use the performance zoning part of the zoning ordinance that got passed last year, which would allow them greater use of the property with the permission of the planning board. And so they came to us with a conceptual plan in the fall, and there were a couple of aspects on that did not conform to the underlying zoning rules. But as the plan progressed, and then at the same time, we did make a couple of adjustments to some of the dimensional requirements within the UC zone. But as things progressed, they 100% conform to the underlying zoning. So in other words, they 100% conform to the urban commercial zoning requirements from the standpoint of density, height, green space. The use is permitted in the zone, and they have setbacks in all cases that are larger than what is required in the zone, and larger than what was required under the old commercial zone, if you want to go back that far. So I get how people have some consternation over the height of the buildings, although the old commercial zone was a 60-foot height. The new UC zone is a 60-foot height, so there was no change there. And I get that this is a denser use than what probably most people consider the motel use to be. And I get that. I understand that. But I don't believe that it's going to cause any problems for there are the projected water usage, projected sewer flows have all been checked by DPW and the water department. I don't believe there will be any traffic issues. Will it add traffic to Union Avenue? Yes, but can Union Avenue handle that traffic? I believe the answer is yes. We have our normal staff recommendations that we're presenting to you on this, but I do want to highlight a couple of things here. First one is that we will make sure that the is specific language that the cemetery wanted to have in the condo documents. We'll make sure that they're there. There are some utility poles and the seaplane shed that are currently straddling the property that really belong to and service John's Corvette and the seaplane operation. They need to be moved, so that will be taken care of. As you know, this board did not approve a waiver for the sidewalk out front, so there will be a sidewalk. And part of that plan is also to relocate the crosswalk and to make the crosswalk a signalized crosswalk so that pedestrian can push a button and traffic will stop. Otherwise, it'll just be, free traffic flowing. And it's at a better visibility area. And it'll be ADA compliant, whereas now it is not. And so that's pretty much the highlights. Everything else is pretty well boilerplated. Obviously, they still have one or two permits that they need to acquire and get approval for, and we will be waiting for those permits before we issue any permission to do anything out on the site.
Thank you, Dean. Where exactly is the crosswalk going to be? And you said it was going to be signalized lights. Are we talking about the flashing yellow lights? That
Yes.
alerts people, so not red and green and yellow lights.
Correct. The flashing yellow for a pedestrian crosswalk. Okay. The crosswalk is going to be located, he's brought that up on the screen. Right now, it's located at basically in front of the bookstore. The crosswalk goes across Union Avenue. It empties out about halfway in the driveway, so it's not a proper crosswalk from the standpoint. It doesn't hit a sidewalk on this property's side. The crosswalk is going to be moved to the southerly end of the property, very near, not exactly at, but very near the intersection of the property with John's Corvette. It's going to be down in that area. Much better visibility for pedestrians and motorists to see each other.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, I'd like to see if the board would like to make a motion on this property.
I would like to make a motion to approve the application. Do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll second it.
Okay. To approve application PL 20200003SP in respect to the staff recommendations, Roman numeral 1, 0, 2, I don't even know, and 2.
Yeah, somebody's second.
So do we have a second on that? Yes,
I second it, yeah.
perfect. At this point, let's have a vote. Kalina, please.
Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion on the motion?
Let me speak first. Us on the planning board, we're guardians of the city. I just cannot believe there's not enough people are aware of the project. I would like to emphasize to everybody, we have an opportunity to make the city better. Shoehorning 32 units on this property is not in the betterment. I am all for development. I am not against it. John does a great job at his projects up in Weird Beach. I just think 32 units is too much for this area.
My opinion on it is it is allowed, even in the old district, it was allowed. And I mean, we've been meeting on this since the fall. So I just feel like people have had time. If they wanted to weigh in, they could have been here tonight. So they've had enough chance, in my opinion.
Charlie?
I agree with that last statement. Again, we had I don't want to use the word benign, but we had a summer camp that was proposed for the Big Island. And you guys that were on the board then, we had, we must have had close to 30 people in the audience here bitterly complaining about the fact that somebody was going to put a summer camp on an island, the Big Island there, and they were just outraged that this was going to take place and how dare the city even consider this. And I think they got that killed at the zoning board, if I recall. The fact that, and Mike's passion is to be appreciated, and I'm going to vote for this. I think that, it is what it is, and the fact that there's been such little comment from citizens as a whole, individuals who care very much about what they consider the makeup of Laconia should look like. But overall, there's just hasn't been a lot. However, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I believe that if there's an outpouring of unhappiness or outrage of this, they can then go to the city council and try to do something on that level. Am I wrong or right about that?
They could do that or come to this board. Zoning changes are going to start with this board. If any time in the future the board wants to revisit any of the numbers or any of the requirements, more than happy to do that. When the COVID situation takes care of itself one way or the other, we're going to get the master plan steering committee running. And, the requirements are not cast in stone. They can be changed. We just changed them not too long ago. We can change them again if that's the will of the board or the community or the city council.
So I guess that pretty much wraps it up for me. And I just I think the comments have been brought up and the concerns have been all very valid, quite frankly. But geez, I just don't know. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. So at this point, I'd ask Kalina to do a roll call vote here.
Mike Delavecchio,
I'm against.
Edwin Bonis,
Yes.
Charlie Sinclair,
Yes.
Rich McNeil,
Yeah.
Kirk Biotti,
Yes.
Jewel Fox,
I'm against.
Stacy Susie. She's muted.
Unmute herself at her.
Stacy, can you?
Mute.
There you go.
Sorry. Am I an alternate tonight or?
Is she?
Yeah, she's
You're a voting member tonight.
Oh, okay. Because I would like to say that I appreciate John and the applicant making changes that they could make. I was against this project, but I've been studying it for months now. And I think it is going to be a big improvement and I am for it.
Okay.
And Sarah Jenna.
Yes.
All right. The motion passes. John, thank you for bringing this to us and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
All right. At this point, I'm going to move on to 05015 SU. Amendment, Hilliard Road, Marsha Ann Way, Hilliard Heights, proposal to amend the
That's Steve.
subdivision to expand the existing 40-foot right-of-way to a 50-foot right-of-way. This is continued from May 5th. So I'd ask the applicant to go ahead and present.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Dupree on behalf of New Hampshire Lake Holdings LLC. It's I think, a reasonably straightforward proposal. Marcia Ann Way is the paved access into a 3-lot subdivision. There's one home existing there. When this property was originally subdivided and developed and approved, my understanding is that it was under old guidelines that required a 40-foot right-of-way. The ownership of, there is some common ownership of these properties and the abutter, the Aqua Verdant property. So the goal is to simply widen the existing right-of-way to 50 feet to comply with current regulations, and then extend it in a northerly direction from the final single-family lot up to the boundary line between Aqua Verdant and Marcia Ann Way.
All right. Is this a public hearing on this tonight? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask the public if they have any comment. I'll open it up for public hearing at 7:37. Any members from the public, Rob?
There is only one member of the public and they do not have their hand raised.
All right, so we're gonna, Chris, we're gonna give it a minute and then we'll move from there.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close public hearing at 7:38 and ask if there are any board members that'd like to comment on this. All right, hearing none, I'm gonna ask for Dean for a staff review.
This is a pretty straightforward proposal. This is a small subdivision that's been in existence for a while now. When it was approved, because of the number of lots, the right-of-way only needed to be 40 feet. They are proposing a 50-foot right-of-way and a little slight rearrangement of it. We need to point out that the purpose of this increase in the right-of-way and the extension of the right-of-way to the adjacent property is to facilitate possible future development. We have no plan before us, and I don't believe that the applicant has any concrete plans either for the adjacent property, but this is being done to facilitate the future. If something is done on the adjacent property, they're going to need a 50-foot right-of-way to get in and out. So that's what the purpose of this is. This is good planning from our standpoint, from our viewpoint. Looking ahead to the future, probably should have been that way from the get-go, but better late than never. And so I think this is a good plan. But I wanted the board to be aware that that there is a future plan here.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. Again, I'd ask if there are any members of the board, any comments, questions? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion on this. Would a member like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and vote that we approve 05-0115 SU Hillard Road to increase the right of way from 40 feet to 50 feet.
All right, can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
All right. I'd ask Kalina Graham to conduct a roll call vote.
Mike Novak here.
For it.
Edwin Moniz.
Yes.
Charlie St. Clair.
Yes.
Rich McNeil.
Yes.
Eric Bialy.
Yes.
Sue Fox.
Yes.
Stacy Susie.
Yes.
And Sarah Jenna.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Chris, for coming to our board, and good luck with your project.
Looks like he's
Thank
all the way
you.
from Hawaii.
Yeah, I
Good
wish.
time.
How do you do that?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on to PL 2019-0069 SP, Endicott North Pine Hollow Campground. A proposal to add 36 more camp lots. This was accepted back in May 5th of this year. And so we'd like to hear from the applicant.
My name is Bob Hebe. I represent Pine Hollow Campground. I'm the applicant.
All righty. So tell us what you want to do here.
We're adding 36 more campsites on the front field in front of the existing campground. It's just really an addition to the existing campground. We already have most of the amenities that we need in the existing campground. We've got bathhouse, pool, laundromat, cleanup station, most everything you find in a campground. We will be on this site here, under a separate application, putting in a new pool and a small bathhouse next to the pool. But those will be coming in under a separate application. As well as, we'll be putting a new office in too, but that again will be a separate permit.
All right. At this point, this is open for public hearing for this also. So it is 7:43, and I'd like to open it up to the public. Any abutters for any input? Rob?
There are no abutters that have raised their hand to participate.
All right, I'm gonna ask that we give it a minute, and then we'll proceed. All right, seeing there are no board members, I'm going to close public hearing at 7:44. And I'd like to ask the board if any board members have any questions for the applicant.
I've got one.
Charlie, please go ahead.
Hi. How long do you think this will take to get up and operational?
Try that again, sorry.
How long do you think it'll take to get this up and operational once we start construction?
I'm going to try to have it usable before bike week, assuming this bike week
In August.
in August.
So that would be the end of August. Okay. Thank you.
And that was influenced by the steer you gave me.
Thank you.
Any other members? Hearing none, I'm going to ask Dean for a staff review.
Pretty straightforward on this one. As the applicant has noted, there already is a campground in the rear portion. He has merged these two lots together already. The sewer and water plan and utility plan has been very rigorously, I can assure you, reviewed by Department of Public Works. Mr. Hurley, I'm sure Mr. Heavey can attest to that he's been put through the ringer on the utilities, but everyone's in agreement of what's going on here now. I do want to something a little unusual here on this recommendation, other than the standard things, and that is under number Roman numeral 1, 2, C as in cat. We want to note that there are to be no permanent structures allowed on the site for these 36 units. So, as you know, a lot of the campgrounds over the years, people build decks and covered porches, etc., and we're trying to avoid that in this situation.
All right. I'd like to talk towards that if I'm allowed.
Yes.
I kind of oppose that because I took the time today to go around to every other campsite, I believe, in Laconia. I went down to Poggers Bay, White Oaks. I went down to the little one behind the post office on Leisure Time Lane. I did not go over to Handicapped, but I'm very familiar with it. Everybody has decks or concrete decks of some form. Also, it's common to have a little shed because these people who were there were mostly seasonals, and it gives them a place to put away their barbecue pits and stuff like that for the winter, where they can lock them up and feel they're fairly secure. And I think it'd be a major difficulty for us if we're not allowed to let them have the same things at our campsite that they're having everywhere else. Plus, we already have them in our campsite, and this is just an addition to it. So I totally disagree with that. We're going to be doing it very much like what White Oaks has done and what Poggers Bay has done, as well as what the little one down on Leisure Time Lane has done. Very upscale if you want to. We're investing a lot of money in doing this. And I think if we can't have the minor amenities that we're after, it'd be very difficult for us to be. We could use it for transients, but we'd like to be able to put in sites that can be used for seasonal as well as transients.
Charlie, go ahead. Charlie had a comment or a question.
Are these sheds that you've seen in other places, are they the type that people just go out and buy, like at Lowe's or someplace like that? They're already made and they just kind of set them down on the ground?
Well, very much like that. There are a few of them that are carpenters and have built their own sites, but if anything, it's an improvement over the ones you'd buy at Lowe's or somewhere like that. And they're not big sheds. They're just sheds to put their belongings into.
And this campground, the extension is not right on the road, is it? Isn't it down in the back further? It's right on the road, or?
But we're planting the entire road. We're going to be planting trees, and I've already ordered. I can't get them now till in the fall because of the fact they're flowering. Rosa Sharon, we've ordered. I think they're between 6 and 8 feet high, and the reason we bought big ones like that instead of you usually start them as 2 or 3 feet high, is so we get an immediate effect. So we're doing everything. So you're not going to be able to look into the campground as easily as you can now. But I mean, I feel strongly about this. I've done a lot of research on it. I've been a camper for 50 years myself, and I can't think of very many places I've gone that are nice looking campgrounds that they don't allow you to have a shed.
So I would ask Dean what the issue is, I guess, or how that works.
Dean, is there a definition of a permanent structure when it comes to sheds? I know when I was in, and I only asked because when I was in Old Orchard today, I actually came up with the codes officer I spoke to there. It was a particular size.
Yeah, we don't define permanent versus temporary structures. We just define a structure.
Okay.
As some of these campgrounds, and not necessarily the ones that the applicant is talking about, but some of these campgrounds over the years really start to get a little cluttered, and that's all we're trying to prevent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the board wants to, strictly up to the board, if the board wants to remove that provision, I'm not going to be heartbroken over it, but.
Okay.
And if we did remove that provision, would that include decks?
Yeah. Yes, it would.
So Bob, what's your feeling? You know, I understand you'd like to be able to add these things, but are you asking us because you'd like to add some, you know, some of your clientele would like to have sheds? Do they want to build porches and decks?
The people who come in as seasonal, treat it as if it's their own. And they tried, I'm not sure I understand, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. They kind of get very competitive. So if their neighbor builds something that's a little nicer than theirs, you'll see them tear the deck apart. Maybe they had a carpet on it.
Yeah.
Somebody put 2x6s, who knows what it is, but it's always nicer when they're finished. So
Yeah.
I just mind my own business and let them have their little. But every place you go, they have it. And to be honest with you, I condoed the campground up where the loony bin is. It used to be all one. And only because of, I'm a few years behind Charlie, but I'm almost as old as Charlie. And I think we both agree that we're trying to get to the 100th anniversary of Bike Week. After that, it's whatever happens. We're both around 80, aren't we, or something like that, Charlie? So in my case, unless I can get someone in my family who wants to take over what I'm doing up there, I'm going to be trying to find a way out. So I may condo it. I'm not saying I will because I have no idea at this point. But whatever it happens, it's only the improvement. The campground up in the top is excellent. I mean, if you go up and ride through it, it's really a nice looking campground. And that's because each one owns their own. And it's the same with seasonals. The seasonals consider it their own. And they like it being the way it is because they beat me up on what they pay for seasonal rates, and they're probably paying half what I should be charging. Yeah. But, you know, it is what it is.
Charlie, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask our fire chief, Kurt, I take it that you guys every now and then check these campgrounds out for, being right away, things like that. Do you have any issues with if we were to change this and make it so if they want to put a deck on or a shed within their property line, would the fire department have issues with that? Because you're going to inspect them anyway, I'm thinking.
We don't necessarily do inspections. We do drive through of all the campgrounds and well, we would have done them by now, but with everything going on, we usually do a May, June drive through of all of them anyhow. And I've had no issues with the condos that he's talking about, and I've had no issues with the August Bay or off of Hilliard Road of having any issues there. So, you know, as far as my concerns go, there's really not much of a concern, and I'll give Bob a little bonus there. We very rarely go to the campground side of this for anything anyhow, so that's a good thing for us.
Okay, so if I get your permission, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Dean, you said that this wouldn't break your heart if you were to change this. Have you heard, I mean, I've never heard anybody in the city council, anybody flip out about this sort of thing before. So is there anything to base that on? Issues that you haven't mentioned from abutters or things like that? I just.
It was strictly an aesthetics standpoint, and there are other campgrounds in the city that are not as nice as the ones that have been mentioned, and that's the kind of the thing we're trying to avoid. And it's strictly that's it.
Okay. Are permits required to get pulled for these sheds and decks?
Technically speaking, it's a structure, so yes. Quite frankly, on some of these campgrounds, that does not happen. But technically speaking, yes. And we'll try to impress upon the applicant that this needs to occur if someone moves in and they want to do something.
So Bob, we would ask that if we approve this and allow these, that you'd ask your clientele to come get the correct permitting, and
That's
so
fine.
we know what's going
I
on.
have no problem whatsoever with that.
So
besides, the town makes sure they check on it because they get great taxes for everything that gets put up there.
Absolutely.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Charlie, any
So-
other comments?
No, I don't know how, so how would we get that? Would we ask you, Dean, to remove that? That one? item?
No, you could, as part of your motion, you would amend the staff recommendation to remove.
Excluded, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But Charlie, let me just make sure. Are there any other members of the board who'd like to comment on this or questions? Hearing none, I'd ask for the pleasure of the board. Charlie?
You'd ask for what? The motion? But I'm looking for that staff, but
It is right here.
oh, so I've got that right there. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I would move that we approve application PL 2019-0069 amendment. And with that, I would like to remove on number 2, letter C, that we remove that line right there. If the board shall cease to do that.
All right, can I get a second on this motion? All right, we got a second. I'd ask from Joel. I'd ask for Selena to take a roll call vote.
Mike Delavecchia,
Favor.
Edwin Roman,
Yes.
Charlie St. Clair,
Yes.
Kirk Biati,
Yes.
Joel Fox,
Yes.
Stacy Susie,
Yes.
Sarah Jenna,
Yes.
Rich Musino.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
It was a yes. That was a yes.
Mr. Heavey, your motion has been approved. You are still all set.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming to see us and good luck with your new proposal.
I'll have all the space I can make for the bikers.
Yeah, I know you do a good job up there, and it is important, like, I don't know who said it, maybe Ed, yeah, it was Ed, about, the people as they put on decks or whatever, that they come down and see
Yeah,
this. the
I'll
planning
make it,
department.
I'll make that absolute. I'll tell everybody.
And I know
Including
Kurt,
our
I
guidelines.
know the fire department, as they always do, will be keeping an eye on things anyway, so. All good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir.
Bye, Bob.
All right, I'm gonna move right on to PL 2019-0253, amended 781 Union Avenue. Proposal to amend the existing approval to add 396 square feet to the existing footprint for access. We will be requiring a acceptance of this first. Would someone like to make a motion to accept, please?
I'll make a motion to accept application PL 2019-0253 SP for the amendment.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have a second?
Second.
Charlie St. Clair's second now. So we're gonna ask the applicant to go ahead and speak on this.
Mr. Chairman, planning board members, Stephen Smith of Steve Smith and Associates. I'm here tonight representing Antaeus Holdings Ltd, which is Mr. Scott Everett, at 781 Union Avenue in the UC zone. And as an overview for all the planning board members, we submitted an administrative review application for the rehabilitation of the first floor of the Opera House building. And that's the site we're talking about. 781 is affectionately known as the Opera House. We submitted an administrative review application, and that was approved to rehab the first floor for commercial use. That's well underway, as you probably know from driving by there. We then came in for a design conceptual review request because of the urban commercial zone under the performance zoning standards, and reviewed our project as a preliminary plan with the board before we proceeded and got the planning board's blessing to proceed with design work on this project. That was in October of 2019. We then submitted site plan application and CUP request in November of 2019, and our project was approved February 4th, 2020. As part of that approval, one of the conditions was that we had to voluntarily merge the Clinton Street parcel, which is right behind in the rear of the Opera House building. I don't have the street address, but we did proceed with that. We filed a notice of voluntary lot merger, submitted it on March 5th, and it was recorded on March 12th. So the property has been merged and is now known as 781 Union Avenue. It was 781, and whatever the street address was, Clinton. As part of that approval, we had to add an addition to the back of the Opera House building, which was mainly for emergency access, handicap access, secondary access out of the second and third floors. I believe the inspection from the fire department was that the stairway in the front off from Union Avenue didn't meet code. There is a stairway that goes up into the other floors from Union Avenue. So we had a proposal of 11 by 34 foot structure in the back that was going to be the access, handicap access into the building, elevator access to all floors, and then emergency stairways. And then we had the bottom floor where I think most of you know the sun is in the bottom floor. They had an access point in the rear with a covered access point to get into their property on the first floor. When it got into the design stages of the elevator, it apparently that wasn't big enough, number one, and it had to be enlarged to get the elevator in there, get a lobby area in there where people could move around and get into the elevator, go up and down the stairs and that stuff, and then the stairways up and down. And it ended up being, instead of just a rectangle, 11 by 34, it ended up being like 12 by 28, and then a 2-foot jog, and then another 10 feet for that access area. So it increased the size of the footprint that we were putting on there. I think it was 396 feet. I tried to calculate it out by going through all the plans from the original to what we were doing. And as part of that addition, there was a storage area added on the second floor off that same addition for the Opera House. They needed some type of a storage area for shows, for equipment and stuff. And so there was a storage area added on to that, and that went, a section of that went from the second floor all the way up to the third floor open. And then at the third floor, at the residential area, there's a doorway and a little balcony that's been added on there. I submitted an elevation view so you could see what it looks like. One of the things that is done with the jogs and the different elevations is broken up that facade of that back, which was just this tall structure. And I think it really gives it much more presence. It gives it much more depth. It certainly is a lot prettier than what is there today. And then the entrance to the sun got bigger because it's underneath that covered area. So they've got a bigger cover under that entrance with a patio type thing underneath there to get into that part of the structure. And that was our adjustment so that we could put all those things together and get those stairways, emergency access stairways, the elevator, and the handicap accessibility to the building, and to make that work. So the new footprint of the building is like 396 square feet bigger. I can tell you that the parking area has been constructed. If you've been by there, they still got the shield up around the building, so you can't see much of the building. You can see the back.
How can we miss the back? We're pretty much shunted back there every morning with all the detours further up on Union Avenue.
This is true. But the storm drainage has been put in and secured. The parking area has been built and paved. They still have landscaping and fencing to put up, and they have to build that the elevator shaft and the emergency access points. But they can't really do that and come in and get a building permit without getting an amended site plan approval. So we're asking for amendment to do those things in the back. I think they're nice additions. I think if you look at the elevation, it certainly makes the building really have a better presence in that area. So that's why I'm here, asking for amendment of that approval. Everything else stays the same.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. At this point, I'd like to open this up to public hearing. It is 8:06. If any members of the public would like to speak.
There are no members of the public that are logged into one.
All right, we're gonna give this a short wait and see if anybody chimes in.
Hi, everybody. This is a little weird.
All right, 8:06, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'm gonna see if any members of the planning board have any questions they'd like to ask. Hearing none, I'm gonna ask Dean to give us a staff review.
Pretty straightforward. This is an amendment to a plan that you've already approved. This is a minor adjustment to the size of the addition on the back for the purposes that Mr. Smith outlined. We have no problems with what's been proposed, and the staff report is short and sweet and to the point.
Wonderful. I'd ask at this point that if a member of the board would like to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve application PL 2019-02535P, the amendment in respect to staff recommendations.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Charlie St. Clair, second. I'd ask Elena to do a roll call vote.
Mike Delvecchio,
Favor.
Edward Willis,
Yes.
Charlie St. Clair,
Yes.
Kirk Biotti,
Yes.
Joel Fox,
Yes.
Stacy Susie. Oh, you're muted, Stacy.
Sorry. Yes.
Sarah Jenna
Yes.
and Rich McNeil.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, your motion passes. Thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all work for this time.
Do we have any applications that need accepting? Nothing? Any new business? See not any old business need to be discussed. Charlie St. Clair, go ahead.
Thank you,
Oldest business
thank you,
around.
Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
I just want to, on the, it's old business because we've already discussed it, and that is the Barton Hotel project. And again, personally, I am not thrilled with that whole 60, 70 foot thing. And I, again, I'll point out when I go along Weirs Boulevard, I'm not exactly thrilled when I look over Paugus Bay and see a wall of houses over there, because those all used to be little cabins. So it is happening all around us. I'm not thrilled about it, but again, unless there's an outcry, and I'll look at Dean again, but I'm pretty sure if there's an outcry by the public, they can go to the city council and do whatever make their comments known, because I've heard from a few people, not a lot. Mike's heard from some people, and I'm sure some other board members have heard from people, but people need to stand up and say, hey, we're not happy with this, and they can go to the city council, they can come here, and as Dean said, we can revisit stuff. But this won't be, I am sure that this will not be the last project of this, where they try to, shoehorn, as somebody had said, something in a piece of property. Somebody mentioned John's Corvettes, probably very possible. Trustworthy Hardware's for sale now. That's on a slope, looking down at the water. So there are several places where this type of thing could happen. So now's the time for people to, whether it's members of this board who want to try to get other people excited about this or go to the council or come here. That's all I want to say. I am not, I'm looking at Mike here and I agree with what Mike is saying. And I agreed with a couple of the other board members, what they said, Jewel. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank
you, Bill. Wait till after it's built.
What's that?
After it's built, you'll hear the outcry.
Yeah. Well, I like your balloon idea.
It's not out of the realm.
And I'm wondering if the lack of public attendance is that cool, or do you think that people do not know how to join the Zoom meeting and it's suppressing people getting involved?
And I guess that is a possibility. And I don't know that we're going to get an answer to that anytime soon.
I appreciate the comment, and it could be true. But I will point out to anybody who watches this on the YouTube later on or whatever, and this is true of any application. They don't have to be here in person when we're having in-person meetings. They don't have to be on the Zoom to make their comments, or they can send an email or a letter to the board.
True.
And that has just as much weight as anybody standing here at the podium or on Zoom making their comments known. I mean, the apathy, if you want to call it that Charlie was alluding to is real, and it's in every community, or most communities anyway, and it affects all of our boards. When we get to the zoning board, unless you're living right next door, there's nobody saying word boo about anything. So, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. And I appreciate the concern that this is not the most ideal time to conduct public input, but the world can't stop just because of this. And I think we've seen, I don't want to get too political here, but I think we've seen recently where people want to move on and get going here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, thank you, Dean. So next I'd ask, does planning department have a report for us?
Not tonight, no.
All righty. Liaison reports. I understand conservation. Stacy, you have an update for us?
Oh, yes. I'm actually just going to give a summary, and if you guys would like details, I can give some details. But in a nutshell, conservation easement walks are ongoing. There are no visible violations. They are pulling information for septic systems for properties abutting water bodies that are not on city utilities. Paugus Bay water sampling is on hold, but milfoil removal is anticipated to begin before the end of the month. And I have been getting notifications that meetings are only being held on an as-needed basis. And the next one is tentatively June 17th. There will be a public hearing on purchase of Pickerel Pond property.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave. At this point, it is 8:14, and I'm going to go ahead and.
Other business?
Is there any other business, Charlie?
I don't know why. I'm sorry I'm being so talkative tonight, but I got a phone call today from a lady here in Laconia who I asked to call the planning board and pass on her feelings, and she said, no, I want you to do it. So I'm just asking a question for this resident, and the question is, what is going on with the church over here, the former Holy Grail, with regards to the stained glass windows, which apparently people have been talking about, but I told her I would pass that on because apparently there's some other people asking the same question.
Yes, there are some people asking the same question.
The building is listed on the National Registry of Historic Buildings. However, just because it is that does not mean that an owner cannot do any number of things to it. The hope is that you retain as much of the character as possible, but there are no requirements. We have been aware that the present owners who took over the property in late April, I believe it was, have been in there working. We have been in contact with them multiple times to remind them that they need permits and those kinds of things. And we've been asking what are their intentions of the use of the building, and it's been very elusive, to say the least. Obviously, the changing of the windows was a very visible thing. They did not get a permit for that. And that's what we posted the building last Friday to cease and desist any work because they have no permits. We got a permit for building permit, after the fact building permit, and also includes a few things that they want to do yesterday. We still need an electrical permit from them, and we think that we need a plumbing permit from them. We expect to have those applications for the additional permits hopefully as soon as possible, but certainly by the end of the week. If not, then we'll be back in the situation where we'll be posting it for cease and desist. The consideration of the stained windows is we don't know what the status of them is. It is my hope that they have been saved and stored somewhere. I know that there are some people in the community that would very much like to take possession of them. Even if that's not going to be the situation, they certainly have value on an open market. So I hope that they have been restored, but we don't know the status of the stained glass windows. But the windows have been replaced with modern windows.
So did you ask them about the windows?
We have not had that conversation yet.
Okay. All right. Thank
Dean,
you.
the newspaper said that they returned to the church in Lakeport.
Sorry, one more time.
The newspaper said that they were returned to the church in Lakeport. The original church that was there.
I'm not aware, one way or the other. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think the historical board is aware of that either.
The what?
The
That building is not in the historic.
No, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. The Heritage.
The Heritage Commission.
There's only been some questions. I'm not saying that.
Right,
There's been some questions about that.
What-
So they're unaware of it too.
What they're doing, what we know they're doing and what we've seen has been done does not rise to the level that the Heritage Commission would have any purview.
No. They're just asking about the windows. So I'm just saying, they don't know that the windows went to another church too, like we just heard.
Right.
But that's all I'm saying, is that nobody's, if that was in the paper, I guess there's a lot of people that don't know. That's all.
Well, I know I talked to the reporter today, so he may have put a story online, after I haven't seen it yet.
Well, that's
but
great if they were brought to another, if they were safe.
It was interesting that part of our gathering your information on the property was a week or so ago, the reporter calling me and telling me that someone had complained to the paper about the windows. And I'm like, that's great. But if there's something going on in the city concerning a building, the place to complain to is the building department, which I also happen to oversee. It's not the newspaper. They have no power to do anything other than make you aware. But such is life as it is. But I just want to make that appeal. If you have a complaint about a particular building in the city, then complain to the building department, please.
So, since you mentioned the Historical Society, Mr. Chair, What is going on with that? Not the society, but the
Historic district?
yeah, what's going on with that board?
We have appointed our members, I believe, in the planning board. I believe, I know the city council had a number of applicants, and I believe they have appointed the members that they need to appoint, and in addition to one of their own members. It's just, it's one of those commissions that unless they have to meet, there's no need to call a meeting just for the sake of calling a meeting right now. As you know, this is complicated enough. Heritage Commission has not met for a few months now because there have been no applications for demos or anything like that. Conservation Commission has not met for a couple of months now. Again, there are no applications and things like that that need to review. And there are other boards and commissions in the city that are not meeting, at least maybe not at all or not as regular as they used to because of the situation. There's no need to have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. And I don't know if we have anything for July right now, do we? We may have one or two applications for July for the planning board. I think it's safe to say that things have slowed down a little bit from the standpoint of maybe new proposals, but there's a lot of building still going on in the city. There's still a lot of activity, construction activity. There's a lot of, we've had a lot of applications from people for additions and decks and, the usual things. So from that standpoint, it's still pretty strong, but we don't have any new medium or large proposals so far. Rumors of a couple, but nothing concrete yet.
Rumors, okay.
Lots of rumors.
All right. Is there any other business? Anybody? Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and see you next month.
Hi, guys.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No, don't need it.